A lot of my clients started selling to private equity. I'm like, hey, I thought I was making a lot of money. I was making millions of dollars a year consulting and speaking. It was like, holy shit, these guys are making some real money, right? So I decided to get back in the contracting side in 2019. Spent 5 years building that company during COVID, so just the timing was perfect. Drove that company from $0 to $42 million in 60 months. Sold that to Apex, as you mentioned. Great organization. Do a lot of work for them now in developing their other companies.
Hey, what's up to the point, listeners? It's your boy Chris, along with my beautiful, handsome co-host, the Ron Collie ringer himself, Mr. Chad Peterman. Chad, what's up, buddy?
What's going on? Never heard that Ron Collie ringer. That's good. Appreciate that.
I actually had another one for you because I love to give Chad as many nicknames as I can, Wally, and that way we can make a nice little compilation of it at the end of the year. And I had another one down, and I was trying to figure out, where are you actually from? And I thought you were from Beach Grove, but you're not. Your parents from Beach Grove, but you are not. So
Yeah.
the Beach Grove badass didn't quite work out.
Yeah, I mean, just south of there. I was technically born in a hospital in Beach Grove. However, I was raised in Indianapolis, which is not too far away.
Well, that's different. I could come up with a bunch of other things. Anyhow, regardless, happy to have you on this and another in attendance for another one consecutive podcast.
Right, baby.
Dude, we are going to have such a great episode today because I have an old friend on here, somebody who I've known from back in the day, knew me back in the Brickyard marketing days, ironically, all roads kind of ran through Indy there too, because we met because of a relationship that we both had with Carrier Corporation. But before I get into that, I don't want to let our listeners down, Chad. I don't want to let our listeners down. So I know they're expecting from me a few dad jokes.
Well, I hope they don't grow to expect it because it is painful every single episode. But go ahead, let them rip. I know it's your thing.
That's subjective. That's subjective, and that's very pessimistic. Okay, so I'll throw a couple of them out here. And I think you're gonna like how I tied the last one in. Okay. All right. Hey, Wally, go ahead and bear with me, buddy. What do you call a shoe made of a banana?
I think I know this one.
Do you? Say it.
A slipper.
It's a slipper. You're the first one to get one. Ding, 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 ding. See, somebody else appreciates my affinity for dad jokes.
It's good.
Why did the bicycle fall over?
It was tired.
Very close.
Oh,
it was too tired.
Too tired.
Hey, damn, you guys are fucking on one today. This is going to be a great episode. Last one. Wally, you're going to pick up on this one. How do you deal with a fear of speed bumps?
Crawl over them?
You slowly get over it.
Mm.
And speaking of fear, our guest wrote The Upside of Fear, one of two books, the other being The Power of Consistency. You have 3 books. The Power of Consistency, and the other one was Consistency Selling?
Yep.
Okay, I got them all right. But I think back in the day when you and I met, it was The Power of Consistency. It was the book at the time, which is a New York Times bestseller. And The Upside of Fear was New York Book Festival winner, I think is what one of the titles you had on that book.
It was the best autobiography at New York Book Festival, the best autobiography at Writer's Digest, I think 2009, 2010 when it came out. And then, of course, The Power of Consistency, which you mentioned, New York Times, Wall Street Journal bestseller. Consistency Selling was Amazon.
Oh, shit.
Oh, got it right there.
Right on the shelf.
Chad showing the book. Look at you.
Awesome.
Fucking brown nose.
And it's good to see you, man. It's really good to see you, buddy.
You too. Hey, listen to this. I was reminiscing the last time I saw you. One of the first times, Chad, I saw Wally speak on stage, and when we were talking about this text message, he would talk about his motorcycle and a box thingy. I'm not gonna go down this whole path, but he had a drum set on stage too, and he was like beating the shit out of drums, playing. I was like, "What in the hell?" Like, this dude's up there playing drums. He's talking about coming from prison, and like, I think you got the call from your dad 2 weeks before he passed away.
Oh my gosh, man, you're bringing back the memories now, man.
Yeah, I mean, it was a super cool story, man. You were like an OG to kind of come in and do sales training. He's a phenomenal speaker, and I was just starting to do public speaking, and I was like, holy fuck, this dude is like next level good speaker. And I was like, okay, I'm sitting here taking notes on like what he's doing and what I'm doing. And so I learned a couple of tricks from you, Wally, and as I was
that, man. It's been fun watching you. It's been believe it or not, it's been over 15 years. I think I met you in 08 or 09, somewhere around there when you were first getting started with Brickyard. And I had forgotten about the Brickyard because I've always thought of you about in terms of Rhino. But it's just watching what you've done, dude, over the last 15, 16 years, been extraordinary. I follow you very closely on social media. You do some cool stuff for your team. You've helped a lot of companies like come up and make some money and grow their companies. And you've just been a solid guy for a lot of years. And it's just really good to catch up with you again.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I appreciate you saying that, Wally. What's interesting is kind of came full circle a bit. One of my best friends in high school was he went to prison for like 9 years. Okay, and this is in that time frame that you and I met, and I gave him the Power of Consistency book. But the only thing he did consistent was go back to prisons. It didn't quite work out for him that well.
I did that for a while too. There's hope for him. I did that for a while.
Shit, that was back in like 2010 or something, like 2009 maybe. I think you gave me a book, and I gave it to him, hoping to God it would like change, but it didn't work for everybody. Okay, because you also talk about mindset, right? Maybe he needed to shoot that a little bit. But so for our listeners who maybe don't know who Wally is, you're in for a phenomenal treat. Super sharp guy. Sold home services businesses up in Colorado, which is the first place I met him. Not one, a couple of. I mean, I think you made your last exit just the end of last year with Apex as your partner. Great organization. And so, but tons of talent, tons of skill. Like I said, kind of an OG in like the sales training model. Like I remember you putting on classes for like BFAD dealers and CFAD dealers, or I think it was like one of the two. And back in the day, you were speaking to like FedEx, Wells Fargo, Home Depot, like all these things. And I remember one thing that stood out before I actually started reading books, not that I read a lot of them now, is you had like endorsements from Stephen Covey, from Tony Robbins, from Tom Hopkins, like shit don't get much better in that sales space than like these guys who are supporting you. So, I thought a lot about it. And then what's cool is that I saw that you're doing, and I'll give you a little bit of a plug here too. I think it's worth doing because I didn't realize you're still doing this shit. Was you have like a sales training, or I think, or maybe it's a sales training / biz prep, or maybe going to market training that's in the Broadmoor beautiful resort up in Colorado Springs. And I think that's at the end of March. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's the 3rd or 4th week of March. I happen to live 4 blocks from the Broadmoor, so I refuse to travel very much anymore, Chris. Back in the day, you and I both know what that's like. Before COVID, in 2018, 2019, I was traveling 200,000 miles a year between the speaking, the consulting, and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't realize how much I hated it until COVID hit, and I got to be at home with my wife every night. I'm like, hey, I got a pretty cool wife. I got a pretty cool house. And so after COVID, it kind of changed our whole business like it did for everybody. And so now I do my consulting, I do my speaking, but we bring people to us. So yes, we got an event in March for owners that are looking maybe to get ready to sell. Going to have Gary Ellicks out, Steve Schallenberger on leadership. Got some great speakers, and then in April we're doing a 2-day event for service techs and sales guys to kind of get them ready and elevate their performance.
Is that something that I hope we're able to promote at the end of this thing?
Yeah, now we have to promote it. I think it's sold out, but we'll bring some more chairs in. Hey, check this out. So in the owners event, we'll probably do it for the sales event too. We're doing a VIP thing after the first day, and we go to my car barn, and we're gonna have cigars and whiskey, and there's a lot of cool cars there. Yeah. And so we're gonna be able to admire some cool cars, talk about cars, talk about selling, talk about cigars and whiskey, and it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Well, I'm pissed I'm not there because those are all things I'm interested in.
Well, you're welcome to show up anytime, my friend.
Yeah, I might have to do it. That's an easy flight up.
Yeah.
Well, listen. Okay, so I'm going to get into some of this stuff because I want to spend as much time as we can on you kind of doing your thing, Wally, because I know you're going to have a lot of stuff to talk through, and I want Chad to be able to kind of ask things from his perspective. But one of the things I was talking about early on is, Wally spent like a decade or something in prison. I think you rolled out in 2002 or 2003.
13 years total.
13 years. So 2003 came out. I remember you telling a joke back in the day about being married for X amount of years, but it was to different people, some shit like that. I don't know why I remember that. It was a pretty funny joke.
I've been married like 30 years. If you count all my marriages and stack them end to end, it's like over 30 years.
So you rolls out in 2003, broke, homeless, like
You got to have thick skin to come on this podcast. I'm seeing real quick here. Like, fortunately for me, I got lizard skin because there's like pulling no punches. Yano's like on it. Like,
but listen, this is all because I think the world of you, man, and you've done a lot of really awesome stuff. And I want these people to hear you and learn some of the things, and they'll get a little taste of what they can learn by getting together with you. And so yeah, I'm gonna bust your balls because it's been a minute. So why don't we do this real quick for the listeners? We'll do like a quick high level background just to kind of set the tone for those who don't have any idea who you are, which by the way, we have you've seen how the trades has progressed. We have a lot of new contractors out there kind of building, doing their thing, and they might not know who Wally is. And I want them to, when they will get off here, be like, oh shit. Yeah. I see why this dude was an OG. So maybe just share a little bit of your background, or like the come up, be specific on some of the things, matter to these contractors to set the tone on credibility.
Yeah, and you say OG, I'm in my 60s now, so I guess officially I qualify as OG.
61, baby. He's on that senior citizen menu.
I'm getting the USAA, or not the USAA, but the ARP or whatever solicitations all the time. It's hell getting old, Chris. You'll find out one day, but there's not much good about it. The only thing I've learned is good about it is you do gain a little wisdom and a little bit of humility, and you realize how fortunate you are to have the life that you have. So yeah, my life, it's crazy. I was a 9th grade high school dropout. I was a knucklehead. I was a punk and a thug running the streets in 1987. Hard to believe. That was 40 years ago, I guess. Yeah. I was high on cocaine and pulled a gun on a guy. Got sentenced to penitentiary for 10 years. I was 23 years old. First time I walked into penitentiary, and scared to death. Had never been in jail before. Had come from a good family, frankly, and just made a lot of bad decisions on my own as a young person. Went to the penitentiary for about 4.5 years. In 1991, they let me out, and I walked out at 27 years old, I guess, and had started the process, Chris. You and I understand so much how important the mindset is. And so I had started a very negative mindset that I was a loser. I was a convict in your early 20s trying to figure out who you are. And apparently I was just a loser convict. And I got out at 27. I made it about 18 months. I went back to prison a second time for a couple of years on some gun charges. Got out a second time at 30 years old, and just defining myself as a loser, just a knucklehead, POS. And 32 years old, I was back in prison a third time, this time on federal money laundering and mail fraud charges for 7 years. So I did a total of 13 years from 1987 to 2003. Of that 15 or 16 year span, 13 of those years walking prison yards. But as you know, Chris, something like crazy happened in 1996. I was back in prison that third time. We'll go into as much detail as you want to about this, but my father passed away, as you mentioned. And I just made a decision. I was 32 years old. I saw myself what I really and truly was, just a first-class piece of shit. And I made a decision to change the course of my life. And I had many, many years to figure it out. So I had this master plan to start reading books and find out what really successful people do. And I started doing that. You mentioned Stephen Covey. That was the first book I picked up, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And spent the next 7 years like educating myself, like basic stuff like reading, writing, arithmetic, philosophy, history. I spent 7 years educating myself on business and sales. You mentioned Tom Hopkins. I learned how to sell from Tom Hopkins through his books when I was in prison. And in 2003, I walked out of the joint at 39 years old and to a homeless shelter. But I was a man on fire, man. I had learned a lot and decided to make this change in my life. I got a job. Fortunately, I tell people I love this industry, the residential services, because it was the industry that picked me up and dusted my dumb ass off and gave me a shot at a real life. I get out after 6 months of looking for a job. I get a job as a comfort advisor for an HVAC company. Don't know the first thing about HVAC, but I could sell, I could communicate, I could build relationships. Did that for a year, opened my own company. My first company, grew that to $20 million. So sold that in 2010, I think, and spent 12, 14 years like you were, road warrior, out there building your business, building your brand, and did that for a lot of years. Back in 2017, 18, a lot of my clients started selling to private equity. I'm like, hey, I thought I was making a lot of money. I was making millions of dollars a year consulting and speaking. It was like, holy shit, these guys are making some real money, right? So I decided to get back in the contracting side in 2019. Spent 5 years building that company during COVID, so just the timing was perfect. Drove that company from $0 to $42 million in 60 months. Sold that to Apex, as you mentioned. Great organization. Do a lot of work for them now in developing their other companies. And Gary, Alex, and I have half a dozen other companies that we own now, and we build. And our thing is we go and build them, we sell them, we build them, we sell them. And it's, I'm pretty good at the startup thing. I'm not the long-term operator. That is not my jams at all. But I love the first couple of years, the excitement of building it. And fortunately for us in this industry, there's a lot of money out there that you build that company, they're happy to buy it. And so that's kind of the quick overview. And I can talk about the lessons I learned and what happened in more detail, depending on where you want to go with this conversation. But it's been a crazy life, and I'm happy to be on this end of it. This half of it's much better than the first half.
That was a hell of a job at high level. Like you've done that. You've done it.
I have done that a couple of times.
You crammed a ton of shit into like a quick little stint. That's impressive.
I've got one. I've got a question for you, and just be interested to get your perspective. So I think as we develop leaders and organizations, the goal would be for them to, much like you did coming out of prison, pick up those books, learn, grow, become better. Why do you think it's so difficult for a lot of people to take that step?
Yep.
Obviously you kind of had the prison, like, hey, this is as bad as it can get. I need to, figure it out. But like, why do you feel like people maybe have trouble taking that step?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I should probably, I know you guys open with some dad jokes. I didn't tell you my dad joke. They're a little different from Chris's. But when my son was a teenager, knew about my whole background, one day he said, Dad, were you gay for the stay? I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, you gay when you were in prison? I said, well, of course not, son. I said, now some of the men I had sex with, they were gay. They were gay. So there's my dad joke's a little different because of my background. That's actually a great question. And it's about personal responsibility. And here's the thing I've learned. Sorry, Chris. You can edit that out, I'm sure. You've got good editors.
No, that's staying. That would just caught me off guard. It's good. I've actually heard you say that joke before too, and I forgot.
You've heard them all over 15 or 16 years, buddy.
Yeah.
It's a great question, though. It's about personal responsibility. And I think the reason that some people don't engage in develop themselves, reading, learning, there's that old quote we've all heard that the man, the woman who doesn't read is no better off than the man or the woman who cannot read. And I remember reading that when I was in prison that last time in 1996. I'm like, okay, this is my responsibility and to educate myself. And then what happens is that as you get older and you mature, the responsibility, it's so easy to blame the external things, the weather in our business, the competition. In my case, it was blaming the judges, the prosecutors, the snitches, all that kind of stuff. And one day I realized that I had a role to play in all of it. And I think the height of maturity, spiritual, personal development, is when you can see your role in everybody you're mad at. I've been sick last week or so. But when I started seeing like the ex-wife, for example, I was angry at her. She did this, she did that. When I could see my role in what she was doing, in other words, if I hadn't left her alone with her kids, maybe she wouldn't have found another boyfriend. When I could start to see my role in everything I was complaining about, that's when I had a real shot at building the life that I wanted. Because most people spend time blaming external factors. And here's the thing I learned. We talk about sales and business growth, right? That's all the business that we're in. If you got a comfort advisor or a technician, and they're blaming the weather, they're blaming the cheap competition, they're blaming the shitty leads, they're blaming their boss, they're blaming the ex-wife. If they are all responsible for my shitty performance, then that means they all have to change before my life gets better. And what's the likelihood of that happening? That's not happening. When we can see our role in all the conditions that we've created, that we are personally responsible, we contributed. I live by a simple acronym, CPA. I cause, permit, or allow everything in my life that happens to happen. When a human being can get that point of maturity, that they have a role, there's no one to blame except ourselves, then I think that's what fuels the desire to get better. And that's when I started picking up the books, and saying, it's not my mom's fault. It's not my dad's fault, not the judge's fault, not the ex-wife's fault. It's my fault. And the only way, Chris had mentioned earlier, the last conversation I had with my dad 2 weeks before he died, my dad told me, he said, son, your life could be worse. And I said, Dad, how in the hell could my life be worse? I'm a 3-time loser. I'm a 9th grade high school dropout. I had fathered a son when I was out on parole, so I had a 3-year-old son that I'd abandoned. I said, how can my life be any worse? And my dad said, well, son, you could be dead. You're still breathing. And as long as you're breathing, you got a shot to change it, but only you can do it. That was the essence of personal responsibility. I think when we all understand that we have the power to change it, then we start seeking out the answers through literature, podcast, educating ourselves, however that happens. But we have to be on that journey because we understand that we are responsible.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up that conversation you had with your dad because I remember how impactful that was at the last words that your dad said to you, where, hey, at least you're still alive. So you had mentioned that when you came out, when you got out of prison, you changed that.
Well, apparently I came out with that last dad joke. I came out too. So.
That's why. Let me clarify real quick. When you got out of prison, you talked about reading, Hopkins' book to learn how to sell, and you came out and you sold, and you were able to sell even without knowing HVAC. I'm assuming because you were learning it. But so there's clearly some defined skills that you learned that you could still go and sell. And insert HVAC, insert whatever, right? Like you had learned to be able to go to market with. Then you probably took the time to learn and understand and do all the things to be able to be even better at it. But I think that's one thing that I've always kind of known you for is being able to grow sales organizations, like really successful sales organizations, which proved itself again. I did not realize you grew that last business to 42 million. I mean, shit. Like
5 years.
I mean, that was huge.
Yeah.
What is it that you're going in and teaching that is there still some of the same foundation that you use right out of the gate when Pursues came out and you started?
Absolutely.
Are you using the same foundational things? Like maybe walk the listeners and Chad and I through some of those things that you're doing that have made that, them so successful.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because a number of years ago, I had a salesman that was talking to a contractor who had seen me a couple of years earlier. And he was trying to sell him on coming out to a live sales training event we're doing. And the guy was like, well, I've seen his stuff before. Has he got any new stuff? And I overheard this conversation. And I got on the phone. I'm like, no, the shit that works hasn't changed. It hasn't changed in 2,000 years since we were trading camels to pyramids. So I'm not going to invent some new shit to have a new event. The same stuff that worked 2,000 years ago and 2 years ago works today. And you know what those 4 things are, Chris? Number 1, build the relationship. Number 2, investigate your prospects' problems. Number 3, solve those problems. And number 4, ask for the damn order. Those are the 4 fundamental components of any sales process, any sales organization. It may look a little different, but in the absence of the relationship, the investigation, the problem solving, and the asking for the order, there is nothing else in sales. So the fundamentals are the same since we've been trading camels at the pyramids. It's the same freaking stuff. The only element that I feel like that I've added to the industry in the last 20 years, because there's 1,000 guys that teach a sales process, and you know what? Every one of them will work. Every guy you know, every guy I know, every guy Chad knows is teaching this stuff. If you run a process, consistent sales results come from a consistent sales process. It ain't rocket science. The thing that I feel like that I've added to the industry in the last 20 years is the mindset component. So I look at the sales process as the centerpiece, right? You have your companies, you build your companies, doesn't matter if it's digital marketing or HVAC, doesn't matter. You've got the central process of what you do for a living, how you add value to your customers' lives, right? But in addition to that core process, in the HVAC world, it's a sales process or the service technician process. It's the 2 bookends that go around that. Number 1 is the mindset, right? The ability to take responsibility, the ability to thrive in the face of adversity, to prosper in the face of bullshit. To a large degree, your success in life is a reflection of how well you deal with bullshit, because we all got bullshit to deal with. And some people can't deal with bullshit. The littlest little situation. And they're like, oh, what am I going to do? Right? Their car breaks down. Who gives a shit? Right? I mean, oh, my wife left me. Who gives a shit? We all have to face challenges. Some people, and I got really good at dealing with bullshit. Like I could go to prison for years and I learned how to deal with it. And it was like, people ask me, do you have regrets about your years in prison? No, I have 2 regrets. Number 1, I left my son in a bad situation. Number 2, I wasn't there when my dad died. But other than that, I got no regrets about 13 years in prison because it taught me how to deal with bullshit. Right? And the better you can deal with difficulty and uncomfortable situations, the more successful you're going to be. Some people are overwhelmed by little things, right? The car breaks down, they get divorced, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They go bankrupt. Who gives a shit? When you can learn to deal with massive amounts of bullshit, then success is not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I guarantee if we went back to the years of Brickyard and everything that you've done since then with Rhino, I guarantee you, dude, you got the scars. Like you got the scars. If I took your t-shirt off right there, I would see the scars on your back of the bullshit you've been through personally and professionally. But it was your ability to continue hammering down, staying focused and executing despite that stuff that made you successful. Because a lot of people can't deal with it. They have some bumps in the road and they give up. Oh, I just can't do it. And that to me is the mindset of a winner who can thrive in the face of adversity. You take that mindset, you take the process of your business, whatever that business is, and then the other bookend is consistency, doing the shit every single day. The little things. What did Jim Rohn say? Success in life is not about doing the extraordinary things. It's about doing the ordinary things extraordinarily well. When you can be consistent and understand it's not about the scope of what you do, it's about the consistency with which you execute. You take that mindset, you take consistency, and in the middle, you take your business process. How in the hell are you not going to be successful? Nothing can hold you back. Nothing can deter you from achieving your primary objective. If you got the right mindset, you got consistency, you got the right business process, I mean, success is guaranteed. It's just a matter of time. And that's what I've learned. That's like, if there's anything I've added to the industry in 20 years, it's the mindset component. The sales shit's been around forever. A lot of people smarter than me developed some really great sales processes. You can go back to early 90s, go back even before that. It's the mindset to execute on a consistent basis that builds champions.
Yeah, but you also now have, you have all that, which is great. And a lot of people who didn't go to, you use prison as your reference for, you learn how to deal with bullshit. We all deal with it at some level. It's just, the whole point is like, once you get comfortable with knowing that you're going to deal with bullshit always, like now you can just plow right through that. And I think anybody who's grown any business at scale, Chad, at some level, we're all firefighters. Like that's just a constant part of our role at some point. And you just know, like, that's kind of what my day is going to be. There's going to be some sort of fire I got to put out, which now doesn't hold me back. Like I just learned how to plow through it. But you're right. Like I learned a lot of that shit early on. But you have industry knowledge. Like you have the beautiful thing on the whole picture, because you have that skill and you have the industry knowledge, and you've learned how to pair these things together to be successful, in this world and still, today. Like, so nobody can't be like, oh, well, he's OG. He sold his business back in the day for $20 million company, big fucking deal. Well, then you just turn around and you give $42 million.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, Chris, I feel like there's a lot of gurus out there in every corner. You guys see them. I see them every single day on the internet, right? Listen, it's so easy to make money in our industry in the contracting side that if you're not doing it, it's because you don't know how, right? So all the gurus, if they're not currently also making money on the contracting side, then they don't really got the skills to pay the bills, because it's so easy to do that. Why wouldn't you do that? While I'm doing my consulting, my speaking, my teaching, why not have a contracting company over here I just sold for nearly $20 million? Why not do that on the side? I have 6 others we're doing the same thing with. So it's about credibility. It's about having the skills, the business skills, as you mentioned, and we can talk about what those are because they're pretty simple too. But the business skills are critical. And if people aren't currently doing it, if they're teaching you how to sell, they're trying to teach you how to sell or do anything else in your business, right? But they're not currently in the contracting side, you got to ask yourself, why not? It's so freaking easy. I built this company. I don't want to say it was easy. I hired some great people. I said, here's what we're doing. Go out and do it. Did it for 5 years, $42 million and sold it. So why wouldn't the sales guru also be in the contracting side? The only reason he's not is because he can't. Just a good question to ask yourself before you spend a bunch of money.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it speaks to your point about being able to handle the bullshit. Like to me, doing it is where you cut your teeth. Like you've got to face it head on. And I think that mindset piece is so critical, because in today's day and age, you can listen to a podcast, you can get online, you can talk, like the information, the how to do it is out there.
Absolutely.
It's the mindset piece that's going to help you persevere and get through the tough times, because it's a very, I always say it's a very simple business. It's not an easy business.
Right.
And I think
That's true.
the tough part is you've got to weather the storms, and there's a lot of external factors. But to your point, how do you deal with those external things? How do you process them? And then how do you look internally and figure out how you're going to overcome it?
And the best lesson I've ever learned with respect to that, because you're exactly 100% on point. A great book I read many, many years ago called Man's Search for Meaning, written by a guy named Viktor Frankl. And Frankl was a Jewish psychiatrist that was put in the concentration camps in World War II. And during his stay, he became really interested in why could some people deal with their circumstances, right? Why could some people deal with the bullshit and others could not? And when they couldn't deal with the bullshit in the concentration camps, you know what they did? They would commit suicide. You know how they would commit suicide? They would go to the fences and put their hand on the fence, and the guards would shoot them. Like if you touched that fence, the guards were shooting you. And when people gave up, they lost hope, they lost the ability to deal with the bullshit, that's what they would do. And Frankl became very interested in why were some people like him. I mean, he was freezing, he was starving, he was the subject of human experiments that the Nazis did on him. Like he suffered the kind of shit most of us will never experience. If you read that book, it's like it making nauseous the stuff they went through. But he somehow survived it. And what he learned is that when you can find significance in the suffering, when you can find meaning in the pain, that's when you can get through anything. And it's kind of like you talked about you and Chris. You guys have had difficulty in your businesses. And I promise you, without knowing anything about your background, I know you got a very successful company, but you've learned way more from the shit that didn't work out, the failures, the struggles, than you have the successes. Like when I'm successful at something, I'm like, I have no idea. I just got lucky. But when I fall flat on my ass, I can typically find out exactly why. And that's where I learn. So Frankl discovered that people that could find meaning and significance in the struggle, the difficulty, then they had a purpose for life. People that saw suffering strictly as random pain, random difficulty, they got depressed. When they saw it as, okay, there's a lesson, what Napoleon Hill used to call the seed of equivalent benefit. When you can find the purpose in the pain, there's the significance in the struggle, that's when you start living and you can celebrate the adversity and know that it's strengthening you, right? I remember when I read that book in 96 after my dad died, I had done 6 years in prison already. I had 7 more left to go. And for the first time in my life, I started doing easy time, because the first 6 years, I was a fucking train wreck. I was fighting. I was struggling. I was miserable. And then one day I'm like, wow, maybe all this difficulty is going to serve some purpose one day. I didn't know exactly what it would be, books and speaking and the stuff I've done. I didn't know exactly, but I became convinced that Viktor Frankl was right, that there would be some significance to my suffering. And you know what happened? My suffering became tolerable. I'm like, okay, this is part of the journey. This is part of my education. This is part of my learning. And I'm telling you, people think prison was crazy. The first 6 years of my prison was crazy. The last 7 years, this will blow you away. 7 of the most peaceful years I ever had in my life, because I knew it was going to be for something larger and bigger. And this was a temporary situation that I was needing to go through to learn those lessons. And that's what I mean by dealing with bullshit. If you can deal with it, understand there's a purpose in it, fantastic things are going to happen in your life.
Hey, do you think that this directly translates to, like, I'm actually going to shift gears for just a second. And that is into some more like tactical things, Wally.
Yep.
Because I know I've seen you do some like live role playing stuff before. I actually sat in on one of your training sessions before back in the day and just watched it. Like, not the whole thing, because it was like a day long thing, but I remember watching some of it, and I walked in one part you guys doing role playing.
Yep.
But I was just thinking about this as you're talking, and how this this prepares you to, I think, be a better salesman too, because you're ready for the no. You're ready for the excuses. You're ready for the whatever. That keeps you from getting to the sale. But I'd say probably some of the most common, and you guys would know better than me, but some of the most common, objections that these, comfort consultants running into, or service technicians are running into, is probably the, well, Wally, I want to think about it, or Wally, this costs too much. So Is it fair to say those are some pretty common objections?
Yeah, yeah, that, and I saw on the internet for $50, and I need 3 bids. So you take the 2 you mentioned, the 2 I mentioned, and there you've got about 99% of the objections that we deal with on an average service call or sales call. And the reality of that, I want to think about it. It costs too much. I need 3 bids, and I saw on the internet, are so easy to combat if you deal with them proactively. The problem we have in sales is that we have been trained the last 50 or 60 years and trained by a lot of the men and women that I respect, enormous respect. Brian Tracy, you mentioned Tom Hopkins, all these guys, right? And have enormous respect for them. I admire what they've done, but I think they missed it just a smidgen. They teach us to do what? To overcome these objections when? At the end. When is a homeowner the most tense, the most defensive? At the end, right? When you start asking them for 20 grand, or back in the day, 8 grand, but today it's 20 grand, right? And so the problem is not how we overcome objections, it's when we overcome objections. What I figured out 20 years ago, I was working as a comfort advisor, just out of the homeless shelter, got my first job. I'm in a bookstore and I come across an article from a guy I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, especially down in Arizona, Robert Cialdini. He's the professor of psychology at Arizona State. Brilliant man. And he's written these books on influence and persuasion. And I remember this, it was on the cover of American Scientific Mind. And I saw this blurb, you know how they put in the front of a magazine, like, get anyone to do anything you want. And like, I was single and I was in sales. I'm like, this could be helpful to me, right? Get women to do what I want, get customers to do what I want, right? I was young, I was handsome back in those days. I did have not much hair, but a little bit. But I started reading this article and it just blew me away. The research and the stuff that he brought to light. The bottom line is, this is the whole basis of consistency selling. Public declarations dictate future actions. You have to understand that your homeowners are having a conversation before you get there. And you know what that conversation sounds like? Honey, we're not buying tonight. We're getting a cheap price. We're getting 3 bids. And if you ignore the reality of that conversation happening, their public declarations to each other will drive their behavior at the end. No matter how much they love you, no matter how much they're impressed with your company. I told my wife I wasn't going to say no. So we got to go in and we got to get them to make these public declarations that are in opposite to that. I got to get them to say, yeah, price is not the most important factor. Yeah, I can let you know tonight if you're a good fit. And yeah, 3 bids won't really protect me. And so I developed my whole sales system around that conversation. Get them to make those public declarations. They're changing their minds. They're changing each other's minds and basically giving them permission to say yes to you at the end. And so that's the whole essence of the entire conversation. The question comes then, how do we do that? And it's actually pretty simple. As I always say, it's easy. It's a little bit easier not to do it, but it's actually pretty easy to do, to have these conversations and get them to change their minds. Otherwise, the conversation they had privately before I got there is going to drive their decision at the end. No matter how much they love me or my company, they're not going to go back on their word to each other.
And isn't it fair to say, like, and I can't remember if I learned this, where exactly I learned this, but you know, because I met you early on, I was paying attention to the things that you were talking about and teaching. But if you know those are the main objections that you're going to get, why not overcome those objections in the process, right? Before you even get to the end, because you know they're going to ask it, or you can at least assume they're going to ask it, and why not put that?
You know it's coming. And I use the metaphor of the sales hallway, right? So I'm at the end of the hallway with my homeowners, and I got to walk them down this hallway. At the end of the hallway is a door. And if I can earn their trust and get to that final door, I earn their business, right? The problem is there's trap doors, little escape routes on the side of the hallway. Your homeowner is going to gather all the information they can, all the information they think is important. And what they think is most important is the price. When they get that final piece of information, they want to sneak out of one of the doors on the side, not the one on the end. The doors on the side, I want to think about it. I need a cheaper price. I got to get 3 bids. And they sneak out of these doors. The key is exactly what you just said, Chris. Close the doors proactively as you're walking by them, right? Have those conversations. Don't wait for, if they bring up price at the end, and that's the first time you talked about it, you're screwed. If they bring up 3 bids at the end, I want to think about it at the end. Now you sound defensive because they're on DEFCON 1. They know the close is coming. You've talked about $20,000. You got to do all that shit beforehand. Exactly what you just said. You got to do it all beforehand. Close those doors proactively, and then you have a lot less stress at the end.
That's like been sales for like that's the best sales. Like you know it's coming. You talk about it, and now it's part of the conversation.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. Because once you get to the end, it is like
Too late.
yeah. Now
Now they're
it's
defensive. They're on DEFCON 1. They know you're trying to close them. You got to deal with that shit up front where they're nice and relaxed and conversational.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot with our guys is you should be able to get to the end and literally turn your tablet or turn your piece of paper around. And if you've got 3 options or 6 options or whatever, they should literally be able to just to choose their option. Yep, I'll take that one. And, you know, so many technicians, you know, are so afraid of selling. And it's like, you're not really selling. You just got to your point, you just got to handle all of the insecurities and questions and, you know, uncertainties that they have, but you got to handle it at the right time. You're never going to handle it at the very end. And actually, if you handle it at the very end, then you're truly selling. Whereas if you don't want to be a salesperson, then just walk them down the hallway. And at the end of the day, they're going to choose whatever it is that they would like.
Imagine this situation, Chad. Let's say that you were kidnapped by Martians when you were 3 years old. And then at 30 years old, they brought you back down to Earth. And they put you in a Nordstrom's department store and a Walmart store. Would anyone need to tell you which one was going to cost more? Just without knowing anything about either brand, just the experience, the environment. Would you know which one was more expensive?
Yeah, 100%.
Of course you would. And so part of our job is that we have to create the experience. If you get down to the end and the homeowner's surprised that you're $5,000 more, you haven't done your job. They should be like, oh, I figured you're going to be more expensive. If you've done your job, I don't care whether you sell the deal or not, right? That's outcome. I focus on process. If you focus on your process and the homeowner sees your price and says something like, geez, I figured you guys are going to be more expensive, then you've done your job at least. If they're like, holy shit, you're $5,000 more, you haven't done your job. They should know by the experience of the Walmart or the Nordstrom's that you're going to be more expensive. And so I'm amazed and dumbfounded how many men and women walk in the house, a couple of minutes doing some chit chat, go measure the system, maybe do a load calc, and then slap down a $20,000 number. And they're shocked when people are like, holy shit, 20 grand. Are you kidding me? You have to lead them down the sales hallway, the experience to where, you listen, the number one question or the number one conversation most homeowners have in their mind when you get to the very end is how much can I get this guy to drop the price? That's what they're always thinking with contractors. How much, whatever the number is, how much can I get him down? If you change that dynamic, if you follow the right process, you know what they're thinking at the end? Holy shit, I hope I can afford this company. And if you go into your close and they're thinking, holy shit, I hope I can afford this guy, that's a whole different dynamic around price, right? So it's all about us. You mentioned it. Chris mentioned it. They do this every 15 to 20 years. We do it 2 or 3 times a day. We should be better at it than them. We should know exactly what to expect. And we should prepare ourselves accordingly.
Yeah, I don't know, Chad, if you wanted to add anything to that, but
No, I mean, I think that's beautifully said. I mean, that's what we're trying to teach our team day in and day out is you are worth it. Like the price is the price because that's what it costs to stay in business. I always laugh at, you know, when my friends call me up, hey, can I get a deal? Well, buddy, we don't go around ripping everybody else off and then give you the great price. Like this is the price because we've calculated as to if we sell this many jobs on this many working hours that we will earn a profit and we can stay in business and keep moving on down the line. But I think it's such a great point of, and I wrote down that question of, you know, during your process as a service technician or a salesperson, up until you present a price, do they feel that they can afford you? Right. Because you are worth it, but did you prove it to them that you are worth it? You know, so many guys are quick on an interview to come in. I got 20 years of experience or I got 50. Well, tell the customer that. Like, let them know you've done this for a long time. There isn't anything you haven't seen. Like, let them know that you have the answer.
Hey, you know what we do, Chad? Take 2 pieces of line set. You take a beautiful piece of copper, as pure as the driven snow, and you get a second piece of copper and you put the brazing torch to it on the outside and the inside, and educate your customer on that black carbon, educate them on a nitrogen purge and whether or not it's going to be done on their install. Like, they will see, you have to educate them. You have to show them the difference between a beautiful piece of copper on the inside and a carbon corroded piece of carbon or line set. And homeowners have to see the difference. If we don't educate them, listen, there's nothing more frustrating than getting on the end of the deal. And you know you're a good company. You'll stand behind it. And you'll come out on 4th of July and fix it. But they're comparing you to the cheap guy. If they're doing that, you have no one to blame but yourself. A product demonstration is one of the key parts of our sales presentation. We educate them. Here's a filter dryer. Here's what it does. Here's how much it adds to cost of system. Here's a 15% silver brazing rod versus a 5% silver. You know what all the manufacturers recommend now? 15% silver, because the system's running at way more pressure than they used to. It's a stronger, more flexible weld. Most contractors are doing what? They're using 5% silver. Why? It's an easier weld and it's cheaper. Here's a nitrogen purge. Here's what copper looks like with it, without it. Educate them. Like, put this shit on the kitchen table. When I'm done with the presentation, they don't have to guess why I'm $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 higher. They see it right there in the kitchen table. And then I will ask them at the end, I'll say, by the way, now that you know, sometimes when people see our prices and what it takes to do it properly, they're kind of surprised how much it is. And sometimes they want to know if we can do it cheaper. Now that you would see all the steps I would have to eliminate, is that something you're going to want me to do today? That's the last question I ask before I go into my close. And they're fucking stupefied by it. Well, you must be really expensive. No, given our quality and service, we feel like we're very competitive. But I'm sure you don't want me to skip all this to cut the price. You got to put in perspective for people. See, here's the thing. Homeowners believe the Tooth Fairy and freaking Santa Claus and Easter Bunny. They want to believe they can get the best quality at the cheapest price. But it's total horseshit. We all know that. But if we don't show them, if we don't force them to balance price versus quality, we have no one to blame but ourselves. That's the reality. So that gets back to personal responsibility, which is how Chris started this conversation earlier. It's about personal responsibility. Who are you going to blame? You're going to blame yourself? Or are you going to blame the homeowner? Look in the mirror, pal. That's all I can tell you.
I got goosebumps. While he was on one, did you see him? I was just back here smiling watching it. That was good.
It fucking cracked me up, dude.
That was awesome. Okay, I'm gonna make one more pivot. How far into this thing are we? We're getting close to an hour. What is? Okay, cool. So I got time for this. I'm gonna make one more hard pivot because I want Wally to talk about this now. And this is around the actual like offers or promotions. So I just want to address it from some of the things that you've done. Chad's go-to that works exceptionally well for Peterman Brothers that we've talked about on some previous episodes. This is free furnace offering, or like that type of offering. Now you have one. That was the 1-year buyback guarantee.
Yep.
And people were like, "Wally, what the fuck are you like? What are you doing? Like, why would you offer that?" But it was interesting. So, because I can see how you would be like, "Holy shit! Like, why would you let somebody go and run this shit for the summer and then come out? Oh no, take this thing back out. Like,
yeah,
why run that risk?" So, I want you to talk about that in particular, and then and share like the reasoning behind it, and then what the success was of it.
Yeah. So I wish I could take credit for it, but there was a German guy 150 years ago that came up with the idea. And
we'll give him credit for it.
Baron von something, right? So he built this hotel in Switzerland and started as a winter time hotel, a winter getaway. Well, now imagine yourself living in Western Europe, and you want to go to Switzerland in the cold. And so he started marketing. People like, why would we come to Switzerland when it's freezing ass cold and tons of snow? And this is before skiing. This is 150 years ago, before snowmobiles, before the winter sports. And he was so convinced that the experience they would have would be mind-boggling. He said, here's the deal. You come from Western Europe, from France, Italy, England, whatever. You come here for the winter. And if you're not happy with the experience, I will refund your entire stay and pay your travel expenses. That was the first recorded industry experience of a buy it back guarantee. So I've just learned from that studying that this is what we have to do. Here's the bottom line. To me, the single most important thing that homeowners are trying to evaluate is the level of risk in the purchasing process. If the risk is high, it makes it very difficult to say yes. If the risk is low, it makes it very easy to say yes, right? So imagine this scenario, Chris, you're at Walmart and you're going to buy a flashlight. The flashlight's $25. You buy it, you go home with it, you don't like it, it doesn't work right. What do you do with it? You bring it fucking back to Walmart. And guess what? They give you a new one or your money back. So how much risk is there for you when you're making that decision to buy that flashlight? Zero. Imagine you're in that same aisle, but a flashlight's $1,000. And there's a sign on the shelf that says no refunds, no exchanges, right? Does it make it more difficult for you to buy that flashlight? Of course it does. Now you got to think about, well, let me think about this. Let me get 3 bids, right? Let me shop around. All that what I call dysfunctional buying behavior comes from the homeowner perceiving that the level of risk is so high. So my job walking in the house, in addition to the other things we talked about, is to minimize the risk. I want to make it easy for my homeowner to say yes. What's the easiest way to do that? If you don't like this system, you don't like the way my people treat you on the phone, you don't like the service, if you don't like the color of my trucks, anytime during the first year, I'll buy this system back. It eliminates all the risk. Now, how often did that ever happen? Rarely. In 20 years, it's probably happened 5 times. And by the way, when that happens, other than going to Rhino, it's the best marketing money I could ever spend. Because the letter I get in exchange for buying that system back, I'm going to use to sell the next 10 million. So it's simply about minimizing the risk for your homeowners. No one really wants their system pulled out. It's a pain in the ass for the homeowner too. What they want is the ability to not have the risk. The risk should be on my shoulder as the contractor, not the homeowners. And that's why the buy it back guarantee works, because it eliminates risk and allows me, I mean, just think about this. What's your favorite car, Chris? What's your favorite car?
That I own.
Or you want or that you own, either one.
My favorite car is my Bel Air.
Okay. So you got 2 brand new Bel Airs. We'll go back in time. And they're identical. They're on the showroom floor. They're identical. Same price, same everything. You drive one across the curb, you buy it, and you got all the manufacturer's warranties. The transmission goes out, engine goes out, they'll fix them to warranty. The other one next to it's identical, same warranties, but it has an additional little warranty. And that is at the end of the first year, if you don't like it, you can bring it back to the dealership, drop the keys in the salesman's hand and get your money back. Which of those cars is more valuable to you?
Yeah.
Just based on that. I mean, how much? I don't know, $500, $1,000. Who knows what the number is, but it absolutely has more value to you. So I'm just adding that as another value add to my system that I eliminate the risk where the other guy may or may not. And I'm going to tell you something. If my guys come back in and they didn't sell a job, they didn't trust you. They didn't believe you. Because if they really believed you that they could get their money back, why wouldn't they buy from you? When they don't buy from you, it's because they never believed. You didn't do a good enough job selling the guarantee, selling the stories, building the relationship. They didn't believe you. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and this puts a hell of a lot, like you got to make sure you feel real good about your installs.
Oh, it puts pressure on you. Yeah, it puts pressure on the quality of your installs. Yeah,
Brilliant.
absolutely.
So question, are you still I know, cause you're doing a lot of consulting and things like that too, and helping with this stuff. Are you still kind of pushing that initiative? Cause have you seen others go do the same thing? They're repeating.
I have a partial interest. My dear friend and business partner that I've learned more from than anybody I can even remember, Gary Alex. He and I own 6 or 7 now different companies together. And we go in, we take a partial interest, we build the companies and we sell them. And we implement that on every single company.
Good dude. I like Gary. Is Gary going to be up at your thing?
He'll be at the owner's event. He's actually coming in because I'm having a cigar guy come in, a cigar aficionado. Well, guess what? Gary's the whiskey aficionado. There's not much he doesn't know, actually, about cigars too. But we got the cigar guy coming in, and Gary's going to be there just to hang out with us. He's going to speak for an hour or so on financial management, and but he'll be at the VIP event too. Yeah.
You've got to make the journey up. Both of you guys are going to be
there.
Oh,
it'd be fun. You're going to see some cool cars. We got a nice collection now, man. We got a beautiful collection. We got Ferraris. We got classic Camaros, classic Corvettes. I just picked up a 1971 Ford Bronco, the Resto Mod. This thing is, dude, when I look at the car, I laughed. It's so freaking cute. It's a little Bronco. It looks like if you turn too sharp, it would flip over because it's a box, but it's the cutest little car. I just absolutely love it. And yeah, we got a lot of cool cars. And so, yeah, we'll hang out, smoke cigars, and talk about cars.
I might, I mean, no joke. I think I might be able to make it up for that. It'll just be a single night thing for me.
No,
But
no, what, dude? And it's gratis, dude. You come up, no charge. You come out, hang out with us. I'd love to have you there and just shoot the breeze with us and hang out with the fellas and the women. Some wives will be there too.
sure, I don't mean to derail us, but I just was wondering about that. I mean, Gary's a good dude, so it'd be cool just
He's
to hang
such a good guy.
watch your thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be cool to like talk about some things you've actually implemented. Like, so we've kind of talked, just about mindset. We talked about like overall sales training, some of the fundamentals that haven't changed. I just need to start to get a little more tactical and talk about some of the objections that some of these listeners hear. And that way, like, everybody's hearing the same shit, and everybody else, like, people aren't just getting lucky. There's a process to this thing, and there's some education to this thing, and it certainly works. And like you said, when people are selling camels for pyramids, like,
That's a great point, Chris. People are not getting lucky. The people that are making it is because of their process. And I think Chad mentioned it earlier. It's not a knowledge problem. It's an implementation problem. Everybody knows what to do. You can learn how to do brain surgery on YouTube. It's not a knowledge, but the knowledge is out there, right? It's an execution and implementation problem.
yeah, I mean, I heard one thing too that my wrestling coach told me a long time ago, and it was when people were saying you would get lucky. I had the same, like, I had an epiphany because I was like, deja vu, because I had the same conversation with my son, and he had said, we're talking about luck, like what luck really is. I think there is luck, like you can get lucky, but
Absolutely.
really, luck is when this is my wrestling coach taught me. Luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yep.
So, yeah, it may appear that I got lucky, but no, I was just prepared for this moment when it came up and happened to be
Absolutely.
successful with it.
That's so true. That's great advice. Great
And so
advice.
but you have to implement the things that you learn and actually put in the effort and the time to do all the things. So, tail end of this podcast, man, it's been awesome having you on here, Wally, and I want to make sure we do this more frequently with you because I know you have so much,
Yeah,
content.
I just love what you're doing. I've loved watching you over the last 15 years, the success you've had, the connections you've made. It's been fun to watch, dude. And congratulations. You're the young buck coming up. Like you said, I'm the OG, I'm the old guy, but it's you young bucks that are coming up, man, that are having the influence today. And I love to see it. I think I saw some stuff with you and Tommy Mello. I got down to see him in Arizona a couple of, maybe a month ago. What a freaking stud that dude is.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's just a baller.
He figured some shit out.
He did.
Well, no, I appreciate the compliments, and I mean, it means a lot. And it's always cool to be able to reminisce and go back to like those days, because man, it takes me back to where I was at in those
Dude,
days.
you were scrapping out building a business, just like the hustle, man, the hard work.
Underpricing everything, like just oh god, it just takes me back. Listening to phone calls myself, putting them in Excel spreadsheets. Oh dear God. But you know what? That's the shit. Like those are the scars you talked about to build these businesses, and all the listeners listening to this thing that are small are still trying to build shit. Like, stop crying about it. We all go through the same thing. Like this is part of the process.
Hey,
Like,
nobody starts as Ken Goodrich or Leland Smith,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
They start at the bottom and they work their way up. I saw something Ken posted yesterday or last night, whenever it was, like, there's an imposter out there pretending to be me. Don't click on it. I'm like, wait a second. How do we don't know that this is the imposter? He's like, there's only one Kenny Goodrich. I'm like, no shit.
well, actually, yeah, because I saw the other comments below it, and I was like, "Yep, that's how you know
Yep.
it was."
That's how you know it's Ken. And Leland Smith, who I refer to as the Godfather, is one of my dearest friends and one of the men that I've learned so much from. And just I call him the Godfather. He is just anyway. But those guys started where you and I started. Leland Smith is a perfect example. 40 years ago, he calls himself an old plumber from
Kentucky.
Yeah, and he comes out and builds the shit that he built. It's just crazy. But that's where everybody starts. You got to start at the beginning.
Well, I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, Leland's a phenomenal human being. I love that guy. I've been blessed to have relationships with, him and Ken and Geiger and Ken Haynes and like all these guys. So like I've had some really great, people help me along the way. And good relationships come from it, just like this.
Yeah.
So, well, hey, I don't know. I know I'm like right at the top, so I got to get this thing wrapped up. But Chad, if there's anything you want to close with, if you're good, we'll go ahead and get the close done. I mean, are you good to go or?
No, I just thanks again. This was selfishly, this was good just to kind of kind of recalibrate, if you will. I think we can get so involved in running businesses and doing all of this that it really does come back to the blocking and tackling of what is your mindset? Are you ready to do it? I think the one thing that I would add is, the bullshit never stops. It's not like when I reach 20 million or I reach 40 million, I just get to sit back and don't do it. When you retire, maybe that will happen. However, more than likely you'll get back into it. So I think that's the biggest thing is your willingness to battle against the bullshit, your willingness to fight it, your willingness to understand that you are in control so long as you think you're in control.
Yep.
And you do the things that put you in control. You can persevere through just about damn near anything. So I appreciate you saying that. It was good for me. I've got a bunch of notes here, and look forward to staying in touch and just talking shop for sure.
Yep. Well, Chad, I got to tell you, it's great to meet you today, and congratulations on all your success. Chris was kind of giving the rundown on what you've accomplished out there. It's amazing. And Chris Yano, dude, I'm your number one fan, brother. I've enjoyed watching you over 15, 16, 17 years. You've been a major, major fucking hurricane impact in the industry, and congratulations. And it's fun to chat with you again and just get to see you. I think about those early days, you and I just scratch it out, kind of scratch out our little brand. And here we are all these years later. Almost 20 years, man. Hard to believe.
I know, dude. I know. It is weird. I mean, it'll be 46 here in a few months, which seems weird, but I feel like I got a ton of runway ahead of me, and it's having a good time doing it. But listen, I got to get you down to a Rhino X. Like, that's what needs to happen. I need to get you down to the next Rhino X because you would crush it.
Let's do it. Happy to do it.
All right, cool. Well, listen, to our listeners, man, like, listen, this is another legend in the trades. I mean, like, one of the best. Like, you just heard why, with the coolest stories, the coolest techniques, but a lot of it's just simplified. It's just taking his processes, from his perspective and the way he's learned things and had a lot of success with it. It's just another tool for you to use. But like you said, you actually got to pick the tool up.
Wait a second, you calling me a fucking tool? What are you?
He's game for the stay, he said.
Maybe that's what, man. Congratulations on everything. You too, Chad. You guys are awesome, man. Great podcast. A lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we had a good time. And to our listeners, hopefully you enjoyed Wally. Make sure you check out that event. We'll make sure to put it in the show notes so that way you can get over to it if he has room for it. And then obviously reach out to him on social. He'll be able to respond to you. I will finish with these last two things. One, he talked about CPA, not like your accountant, but also cause, permit, and allow. Like, keep that in mind when you're thinking about, what's your what you allow to happen in your life, and also what's your part in any of these negative experiences you're having? Like, what's your responsibility in the situation or with the person or relationship? And a lot of those things might help you think back, like, hey, maybe some of this was my fault. Like, I went to prison and left my son on his own, like all he was talking about. So take a little ownership yourself. All right. Maybe that's setting your pride aside, because pride gets in the way. And sometimes pride is a cause of destruction in your life. So take accountability for your own shit. All right. And then, you don't got to do everything, but you got to do something. Ain't that right, Chad?
That is correct. No 0 days.
There we go.